Hello again, this is Tom with Real Sixth String. In today's lesson, we're going to be working on pentatonic scales, how to use them, and especially how to practice them in order to get the most out of them. Pentatonics are one of the most essential parts of learning to play lead guitar, as they're the foundation of a significant amount of solos, and they're a great starting place for being able to use other scales as well. For this lesson, we're going to use only the E minor pentatonic scale, because for some of the techniques we're going to use, it's a little bit easier playing higher up on the fretboard where the frets are a little bit smaller. But I am going to be following up with another lesson which is all about the fretboard, how to understand the guitar, and how to transpose different scales and different chords around, which means learning how to move them around with confidence. First things first, it's about learning the shape of the scale. For this lesson, we're only going to be working with the first position of the scale, though there are 5 in total. The logic behind them works the same for all of them, but the patterns are a little bit different. So what we're going to work on is learning this pattern, and it's really important that you do that first, as then you'll be able to see how all of the other patterns connect to it. There are a few different ways of being able to see the scale, and it's really important to visualize it. So we can see it in tab form, we can see it in chord chart form, or we can see it as a fretboard diagram. I'm going to include one of each for all of those, depending on how you can personally visualize it and how you can learn to understand it. With this pattern, it's really easy to start remembering. Pentatonics are a brilliant starting place because what you've got to do is play 2 notes per string. For this one, we're going to be using our first finger to play the 12th fret on every string, as very luckily this pattern starts and has the 12th fret as the first note on each string. Okay, so with that, what we're going to play on the 6th string is going to be 12, 15. Then on the 5th string, 12, 14. On the 4th string, 12, 14 as well. Then on the 3rd string, another 12, 14. And then on the 2nd and 1st strings, it's 12, 15 and 12, 15. Okay, so make sure when you're playing that, as we've just finished here, make sure you're then playing backwards as well. So it's just the exact same diagram you're used to, but played exactly backwards. As we play in both directions, we want to make sure we're getting used to practicing it in both directions too. As the music will move on without you, it's really important that you learn that pattern first, and especially you start working it into your muscle memory, because then it allows you to start using it more and to start moving around it with ease. Try and run through it at least a couple of times at the beginning of each practice session, because over time it's going to start to work its way into your muscle memory, and it's going to become much easier for you to start to use in the ways that you want to use it and move forward with it. On top of that, a very strong recommendation is to use a metronome as you practice, because it will start to ingrain that sense of timing with it, which is going to be invaluable as you start to use it properly, start to play it along with other people with backing tracks, and start to make music with it. It's really important to start working on your weaknesses as you practice. So you can practice those within the scale. You can learn to start working on the pattern along with the techniques as well, especially considering a lot of the techniques that you're going to use, you're going to want to use within this scale as well. And the final recommendation within practicing is to try and make sure that you're making it as smooth as possible, because it's really easy to break things up and have a as you move between strings, but it can be a lot harder to blend it all together. And then have each of the notes blend into each other. The first method of practicing through it is going to be alternate picking. I notice in a lot of beginners that they'll down pick everything because it's a little less to think about. But what we're going to make sure we're doing here is alternate picking. And that can be very easy here because we're down picking each of the 12 frets and up picking all of the others. The down picking is really useful for riffing because it sounds a lot chunkier. But when trying to blend solos together, you want to have a good grasp on all of them. Okay, so a slow run through of that is going to be. Perfect. And if you get lost at all, just remember you're down picking all the 12 frets and up picking the rest. The next method of practicing it is to use your legato. That just means that you're not picking every single note. So in this instance, we're going to start working on our hammer-ons and our pull-offs. The exercise that I've worked out to pull together with this is the exact same scale, but we're just going to run over the notes on each string twice. In the exercise that I've worked out to practice the hammer-ons and pull-offs, we're going to do the notes on each string twice. So we're going to down pick, then up pick for the hammer-ons, which is just going to mean for the 12, 15 on the 6th string, we're going to down pick, and then hammer on, and then up pick, and then hammer on. With the hammer on, you want to make sure that the velocity you're hitting the string is quick enough that you're managing to retain the momentum of the string, rather than if you're too slow, it's just going to deaden the string. So while you're doing it, you want to make sure that it all rings out consistently. So the way up with the hammer-ons, what we're going to do is down pick each string first, because that's the direction we're heading. And it's going to make everything a lot easier as when we're moving to the next string, we're moving in the right direction when we get there. So a slow run through of the hammer-ons is just going to be. So a slow run through backwards on that one as we pull off all the way through. Excellent. It's really important with the legato ones that you're not trying to rush the hammer on and then take your time to move between the strings. It's really important that you're trying to do it all evenly. Otherwise, you'll end up with a... and your string changes will be a lot slower than the rest, whereas you want to make sure that the whole thing is smooth and you're working on everything together. The last idea that I'm going to fully cover here is just a different way to phrase the exact same scale. So rather than running straight up and straight down, it can be really important that you're then learning to move around it a bit differently. And that'll come into play a lot when it comes into performing it. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to play it in threes. So all that's going to mean is that we're going to play up 3 notes and come back by 1. It's quite an easy one to start with because you can do the same picking pattern as the alternate picking. So it means if you get lost, just remember that you're down picking all the 12 frets and up picking all of the other ones. So a slow run through of that one is just going to be. And once we've gotten there, all we're going to do is run the exact same thing, but backwards. I'm going to add a tab version of each of these just so that you've got something to follow in case you get lost. But if you can look at the original one, which is just straight up and down instead of these ones, and you can work it out, it will mean that you'll start to understand it a lot better. Even if it takes a little bit longer to work out, you'll end up a lot further with it. However, there is no pressure with it. If you need to do the first half of it and only go up so far, that's absolutely not a problem as well. There's a link that I'll add in at the bottom as well, which is to another video of an amazing guitarist called Guthrie Govan, who's got a fantastic way of moving around this scale, but moving around it with bends. It's a really insightful, really inclusive lesson, which I strongly recommend looking at after you've run through a few of these as well. And just to finish off with the practice section, what we're trying to do with this is to vary it and to find different pathways to do these notes. So a lot of it, when we've got these patterns, we've got these notes that we can use, we understand if we're playing with an E minor scale that we know all of these are going to work. But all we want to do is find different ways of moving around it, which is where we start to vary our rhythms, start to vary our phrasing, and then it starts to sound a lot more musical. The next section here is going to be on how to use the scale that we've learned. So we've learned how to practice it, learned how to build that muscle memory, learned how to build that intuitive way of our fingers knowing the pattern of the scale. But now we're going to learn how to use it properly and how to start making some music. In a similar way as we want to start practicing it with a metronome, what we want to start doing here is playing along with the backing track. Even if it's really simple, even if you're not going to sound quite like B.B. King to begin with, it's really important because you're going to start training your ears and you're going to start learning how to give the notes that you're playing some context. Rather than playing just the notes of the scale, you're going to start to be able to hear how to use them. What I'm going to be playing over here is just going to be an E minor, D, C, and D as my backing track to keep things really, really simple. But there are thousands and absolutely thousands of backing tracks on YouTube, which are completely free that you can use as well, which are very, very useful. The first thing to do when we're playing along with a backing track is to focus on your root notes. So the root note of any scale is going to be the note that it starts on. So in this case, in an E minor pentatonic scale, our note that's going to be our root note is our E. So our E's in this are all noted on your fretboard diagram, but just to reiterate them, we're going to be using the 12th fret on the 6th string, then the 14th fret on the 4th string, and the 12th fret on the 1st string. So when playing along, if we start and end our phrases on the E, it's going to start to sound right. As we move forward, we can adapt this, but for now, it's a perfect starting place. So what we've got is... Okay, so each and every one of those notes works. There's no point in the chord progression where it doesn't sound right. So trying once again, get those notes underneath your hand. Try and get those into your muscle memory. Try and remember them. Because if you're stumbling around trying to find that note during a phrase, you're not quite going to have the time to do it. So there are two main ways to get started with the backing tracks. The first off is to use everything that we've practiced and run up and down it as we play. So that's going to mean just running up and down the normal scale. Perfect. So first off, it's just getting into the timing of the backing track. Following on from that, we can start doing it in threes and start doing it with the legato on as well, as we're going to want to do a combination of all of them and mix them all together. The other way to get started, if the whole scale is still a little bit too much, is just to get started by isolating a portion of notes. So with those, the easiest ones to do are the 12th and 15th frets on strings 1 and 2. So we would have... And once again, if we start and end the phrases on our root notes, it's going to be a lot easier to start hearing it and understanding how they fit together. And the next step for both of those ideas is to just start mixing up our phrasing. So we're going to change our rhythms, we're going to linger on some notes more than others, and we're still going to emphasize our root notes. So with that, if we linger on our root notes and then play a few, linger on a root note, it's going to start to sound like phrasing. It's going to be a nice, easy way to get into it. So we would have... Okay, so you just start moving in different directions and you don't have to play every note in the same rhythm. You spend longer on some than others. And the exact same thing goes for if you're isolating a portion of notes. Okay, so it's exactly the same depending on how many you want to add in. And with the isolated bundle of notes, take it at your own pace, but once you're done with those ones, start to move and do an extra couple and add on a string as and when you feel ready. If you follow these steps, before you know it, the scale will start to feel a lot easier under your fingers, but especially learning how to move around it. And then it's up to you to start exploring what you like the sound of and what you don't. And of course, you can start adding in all these articulations to move forward. We can have a slight example. So just to finish, we have 5 different positions of the pentatonic scale overall. This is just the first position, but it's quite important that you get used to this, get used to moving around and start working on the different techniques that you're interested in before you move on. Otherwise you'll know 5 different scales, but have no understanding of what to do. So focus on these, and then in a future video, I'm going to cover the other positions, other techniques on how to move between them, and especially how to see the fretboard and how to understand where to go and how to create different rhythms, different phrasing, and of course, utilize different scales. In a separate video, I'm going to be covering how to move this scale about along with other chords, other scales, how to understand the fretboard. So once you're finished with this, you should come and have a look. And finally, thank you very much for watching. I've had a fantastic time making it. It's been great fun delving into a topic, working out my favorite ideas, and especially thinking about how to build it up, how to improve, and especially how to practice properly. If you've liked the video, please leave a like on it, please subscribe, and check out the other videos if you're interested. And until the next one, very best of luck with the practicing. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you later.